Hello everyone, Igor Paspalov here in Michigan, making a short little video for Roundtable TV channel on the topic of Russian medieval wire coins. So let's get started as we have quite a bit to cover. A nice little assembly of Russian medieval coins from late 14th all the way to late 17th centuries. So first question, why are they called wire coins? And the answer is quite simple. It's due to the production method, which included cutting a measured piece of the silver wire, flattening it with a hammer, then putting it in a dice and striking a coin. And because of this, the coin sizes and shapes were quite irregular and very seldomly having a complete legend, because the shape of the coin was usually smaller than the size of the die. However, occasionally we have an exquisite examples like this one right here. This is from False Dmitri from the time of troubles from 1605, Moscow Mint. And as you can see, this is a very bold strike, about uncirculated condition, perfect centering, where we see virtually complete legend on both obverse and the reverse. And the obverse of these coins typically had a coat of arms or some sort of a design with an animal, and the other side usually had the name of the ruler, the Tsar or Grand Prince, and so forth. And also in Russian collecting circles, these coins are called as fish scales, and I think there's no need to explain as why it's the case. So now moving into the history of these coins. So after a 300-year period that was so-called no coinage period, at the height of the Mongol or Tatar yoke of the Golden Horde over a majority of Russian principalities, around the same time in the second half of the 14th century, a lot of principalities started producing their own coinage again for the first time in 300 years. And these first coins were imitating very closely the Golden Horde issues. So here on the left-hand side, we have dung piece from Khan Jenibek from around 1445, showing the Arabic legend on both sides. And then what we have right next to it is the Kiev, Principality of Kiev, imitation of a similar type of coin from around 1370s with Arabic legend on both sides. And then right next to it we have a coin from the Principality of Ryazan with a similar type, around the same time as well. So, and because the Golden Horde coinage was called dung, in Russian it became denga, and that became the name of the coin for the next several hundred years. And even to this day, the Russian words denga and dengi simply mean money. So moving forward about a decade or so, and again almost simultaneously, across various Russian principalities, original designs start appearing. So this piece on the left here, this is one of the earliest types of the Grand Duchy of Muscovy coinage of Grand Prince Dmitry Donskoy. And this is from around 1382. And on the obverse, we have the seal of the Grand Prince with a rooster, a little four-legged animal, and then Dmitry's name on it. On the reverse, however, we still have the Arabic legend, glorifying Khan Takhtamish and wishing him long life. And at first it was believed that this was to pay tribute to the Tatar overlords. However, as this design glorifying Khan Takhtamish continued well into the 15th century, until decades after he was gone, it is now believed that this was a way for Russian currency to access the Golden Horde markets and the associated Middle Eastern and Central Asian markets. So, and then we have another interesting piece right next to it. This is, again, Moscow, 1380s, same time period. But this one is interesting because it has the Janus double head, which could be a sign of a Greco-Roman Byzantine influence on the medieval Russia at the time. So this is an anonymous issue. And then on the reverse, we still have the Islamic Tatar coinage imitation. So now moving about half a century or so, and here comes the story of the beginning of the kopek, which is the equivalent, Russian equivalent of a penny. So in 1433, Basil II was in the civil war dispute over Moscow throne with his uncle Yuri. And in 1433, when Uncle Yuri took over the throne, he started issuing coins and seals with his patron saint on them, which was St. George. So in the image showed St. George on a horse with a spear killing the serpent. So this is left hand side is the coin from 1433 and Grand Prince Yuri's name. On the reverse, this one is in a little rough shape. However, within a year after Yuri was kicked out of the Kremlin by his nephew continued issuing coins with St. George killing the serpent, riding a horse. And Moscow continued producing these coins more and more consistently. And at a certain time, the St. George became the coat of arms of Moscow, which it remains to this day. And because St. George is holding a spear, and the Russian word for spear is kopyo, over the time, the Russian people started calling these types of coins kopeka, or kopek. So that's the beginning of it. And actually, modern day coinage still depicts the kopeks. This is a 50 kopek piece, still depicts St. George killing a serpent. So kind of a nice little trace to the modern world. And then at the time, Moscow was just one of several very powerful grand duchies which were vying for control over the eastern and northern Russian territories. And these principalities, they had all very different style, design, and weight coinage. And here's a few examples of that period. So we have the Grand Duchy of Tver, so first half of the 15th century. We have the Republic of Great Novgorod, depicting the subjects bringing gifts to the Grand Prince, and this is about the middle of the 15th century. And then we have the Republic of Pskov, depicting the Prince d'Alfmont on the obverse. And over time, as Moscow took over these territories, either through diplomatic means or through war, it started issuing its own designed coins with a familiar St. George again. And this particular coin is the 1480s Novgorod, shortly after Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great, finally subjugated Novgorod in 1478. So he started issuing coins with St. George in his name on one side, and then his name, Ivan in Arabic, on the other side. And this was actually after the official end of the Golden Horde rule, which ended in 1480. So this again proves further the point that these coins had Arabic writing, some of them, most likely just to be able to enter the Eastern markets. And then moving forward again about half a century or so. So now we're in 1538, and now the first full standardization, coinage standardization reform takes place, and it was done by the mother of Ivan the Terrible, Yelena Glinskaya, while she was regent over baby Ivan. So in 1534, two weight standards and two types of coins were introduced. So one was the Moscow type, still called denga, with a horse rider with a little sword, and ruler's name on the other side. And this was approximately 0.34 grams weight. And then there was the Novgorod standard, which was twice the size at about 0.68 grams, and it still had this familiar spearman on one side and the ruler's name on the other side. So, and at this point, the spearman type coins were officially called kopeks, and one kopek equal to 2 dengas. And the spearman type coin style pretty much remained a standard for almost 200 years until the time of Peter the Great, who did a couple of things during his rule. So here's again the 1605 coin from False Dimitri from Time of Trouble. And then now we're to Peter the Great's time. Again, still a horseman with a spear. And Peter the Great in 1696 started dating the coins in Cyrillic, old Cyrillic alphabet, traditional dating system. And then after he did his great embassy to Western Europe at the end of the century, upon coming back to Russia, he had many great ideas, and one of them was to reform the coin production and start producing milled coinage, just like they've done in Western Europe for about 100 years now. Oh, sorry, a couple of 100 years at that point. And these new coins started being produced at the turn of the 17th, 18th centuries. Here's an example of 3 kopek piece from 1704. So now you can see it's almost perfectly round and full legends on both sides. And for about 20 years or so, these two systems coexisted, were produced simultaneously. However, by 1718, the wire coin production ceased and Russia fully entered the modern coin age. That's about it for today's topic. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something new today. Thank you.